Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a slightly unusual disassembly video for you on this little guy. This is the SOG Salute Mini. And, well, this knife came to me from a viewer, a guy named Fred. Came with me, doing me with a note. It says, Nick, this is not my proudest moment, but I can't reassemble this knife. He says, it's a sign from the knife gods that I'm not worthy, so it's all yours, my friend. Sincerely, Fred. Well, Fred, I assure you, you are indeed worthy, but I'm going to do my best to put this knife back together, and I figured, well, I'll document the results here, and we'll see how this actually ends up going. So, right now, there are a couple of issues immediately. Namely, that there's huge amounts of side-to-side blade play, and when the knife is closed, holy crap, is that bad. So, and this is a backlock, and backlocks can be tricky, so I kind of suspect that we'll be able to get things better, but I don't know. We'll figure it out there. I may not be worthy either. So, let's go ahead and start taking this little guy down. Step one, I guess, is probably just going to be to loosen the pivot a little bit here. Looks like T9, which is unusual, but hey, why not? Here we go. There have definitely been times in my knife reassembling career where I have been in the same position of like, oh God, is this gonna end well? Am I gonna be able to pull this off? And well, who knows? So I have definite sympathy. It's really weird. The other thing I'll highlight here, just there we go, in Fred's defense, is that very often inexpensively made knives are actually the most difficult to take apart. I mean, that surprises a lot of people who are just coming into the hobby, but like a very, very expensive knife, like your Chris Reeve Sebenza here, at least the good ones, tend to actually be among the simpler knives out there in the world. They tend to be a little bit easier to work with. They tend to be easier to take apart and deal with, but your cheapies, very often they require skilled assembly and disassembly in order to work really at all. And so that's an important thing. So there we go, that's popped loose. Now finally it looks like this guy is going to need to pop out here. So I'll loosen this up. We'll take it from there. That's a really weird approach, but whatever. Okay, so the knife is now apart. But the thing is interesting. All right. So phosphor bronze, actually, that's kind of neat. Let's see here, there's some kind of a thick grease in here, which is fine, whatever. And looks like interesting. This is kind of wedged on in there. My immediate thinking here is that based on what I was seeing, I don't think that this spring, so this is the backlock spring. This little spring is what forces really the backlock back into its position. Because when I press down on this, there needs to be some sort of a pressure back upwards in order for it to actually fall in there and stay locked. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a back lock, it would just be a back, because it wouldn't lock. That doesn't even make any sense. But anyways, so my suspicion is that this side, this tab wasn't getting in there. And I suspect that Fred knew that very nicely, and so, yeah. But, so maybe there were poor tolerances at play here or something along those lines. But there we go. So I've popped out the clip here, and I'm just going to break it down to the bare bones here, just knowing that this is probably going to be a little hotter than it looks initially. Okay, so that's popped out here. Let's go ahead and clean it out while we're in here. I'm going to use a little bit of rubbing alcohol here. See, this is the part where I'm still dangerously confident before reality sets in and wrecks me. But that's okay. Sometimes I need to be knocked off my peg here. But yeah, so okay, let's clean this little guy off here. Some thickish grease going on here. It's okay. Knives like this, backlock knives, tend to actually, you know, grease is not a bad choice for them, particularly either because, well, you're never going to have that sort of ultra-uber smooth, ultra-uber, that's extra smooth, sort of action that you might get on a, well, a flipping knife or something along those lines. So I think Practically speaking, the backlock friction there against the tang of the blade is going to limit the knife a whole lot more than anything else. So your lubrication is a little bit less important than if you're trying to do some sort of a drop shutty flip a frame lock sort of an affair. Clear off these washers here. Put that back together. The way that everything was fit together there, I'm starting to suspect, though, that this spring just isn't well machined, like it was forced through the first time, and then like it's supposed to be an interference, a very tight, thick interference fit, something like that. I don't know. But either way, my bet is that getting this spring properly seated is going to be the key to the kingdom here. Going to be to the key of the kingdom. Wow. Hashtag not a brilliant man. Because already I'm feeling like this is not wanting to slide home. And see here, it's canted off to the side, which is not great either. So I'm hoping, beyond hope here, that I'll be able to pop this little guy out and make this work. Practically speaking, let's see if I can just use my Leatherman here and pull this out. But that sure doesn't appear to be happening. So anytime you deal with a backlock knife, there we go, that's out. Anytime you deal with a backlock knife, you have this fundamental issue of the spring needs to be pressing vertically up against the lock bar there. And how do you secure that spring in place? How do you make sure that it's in the right positioning? And there are many solutions that people take to this. In the Spyderco Delica, for instance, there is this little plastic piece down here, and unfortunately that little plastic piece is the reason the Delica sucks so much to disassemble, because there's a little plastic post that goes into a metal hole here, and that plastic post basically, and the plastic chunk that holds the spring in, is not stellar in terms of overall thickness and durability. So as a result, you end up with a well, the fit isn't great, and you just end up with problems. So in this case, SOG is elected to do this using this kind of weirdly shaped metal bar, which needs to go into these slots to either side here. So I'm going to try and... no, that didn't work. Considering that the knife is dead if I don't pull this off, I'm not super concerned about, you know, marring the inside finish here, and it's a donation regardless. I'd like to get it back and working, though, so I can do a full Nick Shabazz review. Okay. So part of my issue here is that this little piece appears to be, there's like a little turn down on there, so I think that we've got ourselves a problem here, in that little piece is slightly, well, it's malformed or something along those lines. So what I'm actually going to try and do here is just use this little guy here to try and deburr that, because it could be that there's just a really thick burr on this guy, and that's actually part of what's causing our problems here. That's why it's not wanting to slide home. So there we go, and now I'll go ahead and do the other side here while I'm at it, because why not? Failing this, my next step will be to go grab my Dremel, a little rotary tool, which is, you know, one of those things that's, well, easy to use incorrectly. And I will probably be using it incorrectly, let's be real here, but you know, but can be very helpful for removing material quickly here. This guy is... that's better. Let's see if I can use the pliers here. Actually, no, these pliers aren't a great idea. Let's try a different thing. Guys, we're in this one for the long haul, so grab some coffee. This may be a little trickier than I had anticipated. Here we go. These little buggers will do the trick, hopefully. These are the variant of the old Chadle locks. This was back when Craftsman was still good. One of the few tools I have from my father. And but they work okay. But I'm just going to try and use these little pliers here to force this little piece into its little slot here. And actually, that did the trick. So we can see here that this guy is now in place, and that's great. That's half of the battle here. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, actually, is start remaking the, start rebuilding, if you will. Because, well, yeah, that's going to be my next step anyways. So what I'll do is grab the Loctite here. I think it might have been that burr on there that was not wanting to come loose. He says optimistically. Because remember, hashtag not a brilliant man. Okay, this is not D-shaped on either side. There's a slight demerit, but hey, whatever. Now I'm gonna try, oh, you little bugger. Come on now. I know you want, oh. See, unfortunately, knife disassembly is one of those skills that requires a couple of more hands than I have been blessed with. And that's okay. There we go. But I have often wished that I was raised by octopi and therefore had their skill set. Namely, many tentacles. Be tentacool. Yeah? That was hilarious. I don't know how you guys don't think that was just hilarious. You should just be losing it in the aisles. Although, actually, if you're watching this someplace where there are aisles to lose it in, well, that's pretty weird. Okay. So this little guy here is... I don't actually know what that is offhand. Oh, that's maybe an over-travel. No, that's probably the blade stop pin. All right, whatever. This is the pivot. No, that's not the pivot. This is the, this is this little guy here. So that goes through the other side. Okay, beautiful. Okay. And now, where is the pivot anyways? Come here, pivot. There's the pivot. Clean this off real quick. Like I said, we may be barking up the wrong tree. I may be confidently forging ahead, although I have a dream that if we can force this other side in as well, now that it's deburred, that we'll be able to make this happen. But we will find out. I'm attempting a knife resurrection here. It's a somewhat less miraculous, but you know what? Still kind of fun. The moving thumb stud here is an interesting little detail. You don't see that. Yeah, that's the stop pin. See, right here, this stops the blade itself from hitting the inside of this backspacer. Well, not backspacer, but it stops the blade from hitting the lock bar there. Okay. So, this is going to be interesting. Because unfortunately, I think, unless I'm, no, that pops through this side, I think. Here, I'm going to take the blade out of play for the moment. Yeah, I can pop that through here. Okay, good. So I'm going to add a little bit of lubrication right here to the, actually, I'm going to put a little tiny bit of this stuff on the edge here. That's maybe a little more. This is not actually lubrication you need for the knife to run properly, but it may be helpful in me getting this slid into the other side there. So, okay. Yeah. So now this is properly in place. There's not that much tension on this spring, which is fine. But, okay. Pop that in here. Now, do this. And there we go. Okay, this goes into this pin from the other side. That's fine. I can live with this. Let's spin this bad boy around. Okay. Now, this right here is the other moment of truth. I need to get enough crank on this guy here for it to pop through. And I'm going to go ahead and grab my pliers again. See if I can get that to pop in there. Come on, you little bugger. There are a lot of things that need to be in alignment here and don't appear. Oh, there we go. Hey, we're almost there. Hey, we're in. Okay, guys. Look, this is I'm optimistic right now. Because the big issue with the way it came to me was that there was these big gaps here. And so now that everything is popped in there, and that did require distorting the frame in a kind of ugly way. Not a big fan of that. But whatever it was, we're now in. So I'm going to, before I get too cocky here, I'm going to go ahead and start re-popping things in. Let's move these pliers. Thanks, Dad. From beyond. Well, no, not from beyond. To beyond, I suppose. Neither here nor there. All right. Ah, damn it. This thing needs to be popped further back through, I think. Oh, there we go. It could have just as easily been done with channel locks or something like that. There we go. So that's now in there. That's good. Now I need to pop in these backspacer screws. And I'll do that, then I'll pop the clip in. Because the clip is one of those, and this is a nice design, actually, I'll say, on the clip side. Here, I'll pop this in, then I'll talk about that a little bit. Because the clip is ambidextrous in this way, which is itself a beautiful thing, but it's ambidextrous without a whole lot of extra drilling. Effectively, what happens here is that you've got these two slits here that this clip can fall into. And because I want this on the right side, I will mount it in this way here. And so you just slide it into there, and then what we'll do is just Loctite this screw, pop it in here. Come on now. The other thing that's possible here as a source of contention and issue is that this guy might have been, I forget which side this was installed on, but it could have been that this guy was not oriented in there in the right direction. I don't know, but whatever it is, I'm hopeful. I should stop talking before I doom myself, but I'm hopeful that we're okay here. All right. So we pop the pivot in here. Now, moment of truth. There's still a little side-to-side play in there. Let's pop it open. No blade play there. Tighten the pivot a little bit more. Smooth enough. Whole bunch of stop pin play, or thumb stud play, but hey, whatever. That's open. A little play here. Let's crank it down a little more. Oh, there. It's a very shallow Torx he's got going on there. All right. Not a terribly satisfying close. Feels like it's trying to work itself loose already. Yeah, there's not like a flat area on the other side of the blade for it to pop onto, which I can live with. Okay, so I'm applying a little bit of grease. Well, in this case, I'm using 85 weight nano oil. It's thicker, just to the back of this here, and that'll let the back lock slide a little more freely along the tang of the blade there. It's, you know, it's not ever going to be a smooth knife at this price point and whatnot, but it does smooth things out a little bit, makes the whole thing a little easier to do, and easier to flick. Guys, I think we actually were able to do it here. We have a resurrection. This little guy here, although a much less impressive one, I'll give you. But this little guy is back up and running now. The issue was, I believe, those burrs on the side of the lock pin, or I'm sorry, the back spring. Oh, come off it now. The spring for the back lock. Once those burrs were removed, I could, and you know, giving it a whole bunch of freaking force, I was able to crank those guys in and distort the frame sufficiently that it would pop in, and thus that there wouldn't be too much gap here, and thus that it could work out. So I now have myself a SOG Salute Mini, which I will do a full review of and then post to the channel. So Fred, thank you very much for sending this knife along. I'm sorry that it gave you trouble. I assure you, you are indeed worthy, but this was a worthy adversary. So there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of the day, and that, well, any problems you have that make you feel unworthy, you find to be solvable as well. Have a good one. Bye now.